Okay, good day, everyone, and welcome to this web seminar entitled Practical Business Intelligence for Manufacturers. My name is Jacques Ticari. I am the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Industrial Software. I'm joined on this call by two of my colleagues. I have Renato De Gasperis. Renato is the President and Chief Technology Officer. Renato is online with us and he'll be handling the question panel during the webinar. I am also joined on this call by Edward Zuccallo, who is the Vice President, Member Advisory and Practices. And Edward is also online with us. He'll be walking us through the demonstration part of the webinar today, which takes me to a few housekeeping items. The first one is that even though all participants are muted, we do want to hear from you and allow you to ask questions. So that's why Renato's online today to handle questions from the question panel. Feel free at any time during the session to ask questions, and he'll do his best to get to you promptly. The second item that's in the housekeeping category, on the GoToWebinar control panel, there's a section called Handouts that you can use at any time during this session to download handouts. There are 3 handouts available. The first one is a slide deck of today's introduction and conclusion. There's also a 1-page data sheet about plant gauge, and there's an infographic published by MESA on manufacturing metrics that matter. So these are free of charge, they're handouts, and you can download them. Okay, a quick overview of the agenda. We will kick things off with a little bit of theory, starting with addressing the what is big data and why should you care topic. We'll then talk about real-life examples of the use of metrics in business. We'll look at 3 ways KPIs are used in manufacturing, and we'll move on to some of the common specific metrics tracked by many manufacturers. After that bit of theory, we'll get a little bit more practical. And what we'll do is we'll have a description of the Industrial's plant gauge manufacturing intelligence dashboard, and we'll follow that by a product demonstration. Okay, so what is big data? We hear the expression all the time, and we hear it applied to computers and systems, but we also hear it applied to a whole bunch of other disciplines, whether it's government, communication, security, transportation, music, you name it. Every discipline today has data growth to deal with. At a very high level, big data refers to the fact that technology today allows us to capture large volumes of information at a very high velocity. And what this does is that it allows us to capture more data than ever thought imaginable. So although there are challenges in capture and security and storage, the biggest challenge is making sense of all this data and interpreting it as to extract value from it. So I talked about the number of discipline. One that's common to a lot of us is the sport of baseball, which, the baseball has been using advanced statistics for a very long time, but they keep adding to the number of stats that are available to evaluate the performance of players and teams. So, those of you who are familiar with baseball will recognize that, slugging percentage came on the dashboards and analytics publications, if you will, over the last couple of years. Walks and hits per innings pitched is another one. The sport of hockey has recently added Corsi stats and Fenwick. Now, of course, as in the sports discipline, in any discipline, not all experts agree on the meaning of big data. Of course, accepting superficial observations from Corsi or baseball experts or any other discipline as gospel would be completely foolish. But at the same time, so would ignoring the data. So what progressive world-class organizations are working at is essentially building management teams and systems that gather the data, discuss findings with colleagues, including some, people from both sides, if you will, old, quote unquote, old school managers, as well as new generation managers, and then develop models for successful decision making that will yield increased competitiveness, agility, and increased employee engagement. Continuing on with theory, there's a book out there called The Great Game of Business that's been on the market since the early 1990s. This book, and some of you may have come across it in the past, the book depicts the story of a company that was facing a shutdown, and the company was bought by the employees for relatively a song, and turned into one of the most remarkable business success stories America has witnessed. The company in question, International Harvester, was bought in 1983 by its employees and was the object of a major overhaul using concepts known today as open book management. The results were absolutely impressive. In the 9 years between the acquisition and the publication of the first edition of the book, International Harvester revenues grew from 16 million to 83 million, and the company value from 100,000 to 25 million. This turnaround was achieved by practicing open book management, which very simply consists of picking key metrics, measuring them, publishing these to all employees, then educating employees on the metrics' meaning. Employees are then asked to participate in setting targets and work every day at ways to improve on these metrics. And the book goes on to talk about how management style comes into play here. If nobody pays attention, people stop caring. And so it's key that management draw attention to the metrics on a regular basis and stimulate discussion about suggestions for improvement. The success story was the inspiration behind the book. So this book, The Great Game of Business, has since become the quote unquote scripture for a management consulting program that was founded by the CEO of International Harvester, a gentleman by the name of Jack Stack. Inc. magazine calls him the father of open book management. The Great Game is a business practice that organizations today can subscribe to and get guidance and consulting as to how to apply open business or open book management concepts in their firms. So, and of course, the uniqueness about this program is that it's not born in a think tank. It is based on a true story and an amazing one at that. By the time the 20th edition was made available, International Harvester's value, now known as SRC, had grown 348,000%. So how does this all relate back to big data? Well, as you can imagine, tools to capture and publish KPIs about a business have evolved tremendously since 1983. And it's only made the Great Game of Business even more interesting and a lot easier to practice. And As an add-on to this, there was a study published in 2012. The study was conducted by MESA, the Manufacturing Enterprise Solutions Association, and their study was based on a survey of 300 manufacturing firms around the world. Different types, different sizes, countries, sectors, number of employees, etc. And the study focused on the most successful of these businesses. So the top 75 that showed the best performance were selected for analysis. And the study again looked to identify which technologies and business practices were these businesses applying to gain that competitive advantage. Not surprisingly, these firms were publishing KPIs and using these to drive improvement in key areas that led them to success. So a little bit of a substantiation and real life example of how concepts of open book management are being applied by today's most successful manufacturing firms. By the way, one of the handouts from today's session that I referred to earlier is an infographic from MESA. So if you're interested in getting the study, you can get the information about MESA from the handout, go to their website, and just go to the resources section on their website. There's a download section here. Look for a study called The Pursuit of Performance Excellence. So the business practices identified in the MESA study, which are the same ones promoted by the Great Game of Business, can be summarized as follows: measure, engage, act. In measurement, it's important that metrics be selected that apply to all areas of manufacturing firm. So in the screen that you're looking at, the diagram on the left-hand side illustrates that there are metrics in 8 key areas of, that could apply to a manufacturing firm, namely financial, inventory, innovation, responsiveness, efficiency, quality, maintenance, and compliance. Alignment is also key. So the Great Game book speaks to a prominent CEO in the 80s who went ahead and told his employees that customer service was key, even though his own pay was linked to RONA, or return on net assets. Employees eager to service customers went out and bought all this inventory, which drove RONA to the floor. And the rest of the story is a complete disaster, but the main lesson is make sure you're aligned and your goals at the boardroom level are aligned with what you're asking people to do across the rest of the organization. To properly engage, employees will need to be educated on the meaning of the KPIs they'll be managing with. Not everyone can be expected to understand capacity utilization or how it's calculated, but most floor employees are savvy enough that they'll understand the concepts and how it applies to what they do on a daily basis, or vice versa, how they do or what they do on a daily basis can have an impact on certain of the metrics that are being measured. So the key, according to, again, the Great Game of Business and some of the findings from this MESA study, is teach them, then publish and review, obtain suggestions, and then act on your conclusions and start the continuous improvement cycle. So really, this is nothing new. We've all heard the expression, maybe expressed differently, but I like to express it as follows: you can manage what you measure. So here are some of the most common KPIs used in manufacturing firms. Of course, not all KPIs apply to all firms. What's key in one firm is not necessarily key in another. There are differences in size, type, sector, breadth that can come into play in deciding what's key for your firm. In any case, though, here's a rundown of some of the most common KPIs used. We've all heard of capacity utilization, which indicates how much of the total manufacturing capacity is being utilized at any point in time. Downtime in proportion to operating time, the ratio of downtime to operating time, which is a direct indicator of asset availability for production. Resource efficiency, a measure of how well some resources performed relative to an established standard. The same concept can be applied to labor efficiency, measuring actual hours versus planned hours, and this can be done looking at groups or individuals. Manufacturing cycle time, the time it takes for manufacturing to produce a specified product from the time the order is released to production all the way through to finished goods. Manufacturing cost as a percentage of revenue. That's a ratio of total manufacturing cost to the overall revenues produced by a particular facility. We've all heard of on-time delivery to commit, the percentage of time that manufacturing delivers let me re-express that. The percentage of times that manufacturing delivers a completed product on schedule that was committed to customers. Productivity is the measure of overall production ability for manufacturing for a product. Throughput's kind of looking at it the other way, measures how much product is being manufactured over a specified period of time. Work in progress, another common metric used in manufacturing, that's the amount of inventory tied up in work in progress expressed as a dollar amount. And finally, yield, which is the percentage of products that are manufactured correctly and to specification the first time through the process without scrap or rework. Okay, so now that we've had a look at the theoretical side, let's start getting into a little bit more of the practical approach to this as viewed from an industrial's point of view. So the following segment focuses on what tools industrials brings to the table for our customers to help you apply the business practices described earlier. So this diagram describes the business process that Industrios ERP supports. The orange hexagons depict the processes supported by Industrios. So it starts over here at 1 with estimating, quoting, moves on to sales order management, production orders, MRP calculations, scheduling, inventory control, shop floor tracking, shipping, project and job costing, and manufacturing CRM. The gray hexagons represent the best-in-class third-party applications that we've used integration tools to build bridges between these and industrials. So examples of these include financials, engineering applications like SolidWorks or AutoCAD, payroll packages, logistics carriers. So as you can surmise from this diagram, Industrial CRP captures a lot of data for our customers. This, in a sense, is your big data to help deal with all this. Industrials is built to, it was designed and built to provide actionable management tools to its users. And one of these is Plant Gauge. So what is Plant Gauge? Plant Gauge is Industrios' manufacturing intelligence dashboard. It reads information written to the Industrios data mart and can publish metrics boxes to inform, motivate, alert to certain conditions. Edward, in a minute, will walk us through specifics. But, just examples of metrics that you could be measuring could include, for example, purchase orders to expedite or late purchase orders not yet received. These are not only presenting information, but the beauty of having these metrics run inside of Industrios allows linking to action-oriented screens that facilitate addressing situations efficiently. So for example, clicking on the PO to expedite metric box would take the user into a workbench and allow him or her to take action. PlantGauge also allows advanced visualizations by embedding the Tableau business intelligence tools as an add-on to PlantGauge. The advanced visualizations give users all the power of Tableau, which is industry-leading functionality in data visualization techniques. Finally, PlantGauge can also be displayed in theater mode, allowing KPIs to be displayed on large screen monitors on the plant floor. Many firms today, of course, publish KPIs on whiteboard, and a lot of these are posted weekly in many cases. So what Industrials with PlantGauge allows Industrials customers to do is move into a world of real-time publishing, which can be key in many processes and can also facilitate the concepts that we've discussed earlier about open book management, about fostering employee engagement, and using these concepts to drive more profitability out of your plants. Okay, time for the product presentation. No, we did not invite Vince the Chamois guy, but I trust you will agree that Edward Zuccallo will turn out to be a much wiser choice for this. And at this time, what I'd like to do is turn things over to you, Edward, and I believe that should be happening right now. Edward?
I am here. Hello. Let me know when the Industrios main menu is visible.
It is visible. Thank you.
All right. So thank you, Jacques. Good day, everybody. I will pick up the ball at this point and run for a little bit, showing you the PlantGauge product within Industrios and how we have giving you some tools to generate, create, manage, and display the metrics and visualizations that Jacques has been talking about. Industrios is a tool, obviously, can collect and report on much of the data, and now that we have that data in our system, we're looking for ways to present it to our user base in different forms. So what you're looking at here is the Industrios main menu, and on the right-hand side is our dashboard area. And it's a kind of a canvas that you can use, and we're going to show a couple of different ways to present information to the user base. And the canvas can be information-oriented and does not necessarily have to only be indicator-oriented. As we see here on the home page, we're displaying some information that comes from the Industrios company, and this can be switched out to display information from your company so that people are being communicated to consistently and have a common base for your information. Within the dashboard area, we're going to be taking a look at 2 or 3 different kinds of dashboards. I'm going to focus on the sales order dashboard. But as an example of a dashboard that allows you to link into information, I have here a calendar type gadget which can integrate with the Industrios information and specifically with the CRM and VRM appointments to display to a user, and all this is security driven as well, but display to a user key events or key tasks or key appointments that are coming up on the horizon. In this case, there would be a review meeting that's coming up or that has passed that I was supposed to have attended, and I was way too busy, so I didn't go. But if I wanted to interact with it, I could hit the edit button there, go right into the task itself, complete the information, and forward it on to whoever was needing it. So from an information point of view, the canvas or the main menu canvas gives us opportunities to show many different kinds of data back to the users. Specifically though, and we're talking about complaint gauge today, let's take a look at that big data that's within Industrios and how we can display the metrics for our users. I'm going to move down to the plant gauge module, and we're going to start with the actual data mart definition. So having the module itself as a front end to allow us to manage, create, and configure these data marts really gives us some power to structure the information in ways that are most meaningful to us. The areas that the data marts are available, if I look at the object types here, the list will pop down, and you can see that there's receivables related, inventory related, could be production related, purchasing, sales, lots of different areas. The plant gauge module itself will ship with indicators and gadgets for the 5 key areas that we define in terms of our workflows, of sales workflows, purchasing workflows, the inventory workflow, the time and attendance workflow, and the production workflow. To that, you can obviously be adding your own, and you can generate more in certain areas depending on what kind of information or where the key areas of tracking that you require for your company. In the end, we're going to be able to display this as Jacques mentioned. We can display it to the workstation, or we can display it in the theater mode, and I will be showing you that in a moment. I'm going to close this and go back to the data mart that's already defined here. And the creation and management of these data marts has been wizardized, if you will, to make it easy to walk through and select the correct criteria to generate the proper and usable data mart that we require for analysis. So I click on the sales order data mart. It'll take me to the wizard that was used to create itself. We're going to walk through. This one's called the data mart. I've given it a name, the description for me, any notes, and I can walk down next to the summarization levels. The summarization levels are the key grouping areas that I would like within my data mart, and we'll be using this later on when we attach targets or attach different metrics. And as I look at the pull down, the fields that are available to me are fairly exhaustive within the sales order module, and I can pick, in this case, the 5 most important, up to 5, that most make sense to the data mart reason, or the reason for which I am creating this data mart. In this case, this data mart is a very high-level sales order-oriented one. I could be looking at something very, very unique or very, very constrained, and I can use these tools to help me constrain the amount of information that's available to me in that particular data mart. The next step in the wizard allows me to get to the dimensions. The dimensions are the text or date fields that I want to add into my normalized database, and these will allow me to apply functions such as counts. So the number of times an order is placed, the number of times a customer has placed an order can be the types of metrics that will be generated from your dimensions. The measures are the numeric kinds of fields. So I can select, again, any and as many as I need or want to support the type of calculations such as sums or mins or maxes or averages that I am looking to again display at the end. One of the key things as you're defining the data marts is you have to have an idea of the end in mind in terms of either the indicator or graph or visualization that you want to describe, and you would build the data mart to support that particular end goal. And as we said, you can have as many data marts as necessary to arrive at the information to get the data marts, or sorry, the metrics displayed as you require them. Close that up. Move to my calculated fields. Sometimes when you have measures that are selected, you need to transform them or need to work on them so that you can create them or visualize them in different formats. Maybe changing a unit of measure or changing a numeric field into some other kind of field that would allow us to, again, display. The ability to have the calculated fields inside the database allows us to perform the calculations before and populate the database with those calculations rather than leaving them to be ad hoc measures. The target screen, in the master file area here, I have a target definition maintenance screen. So I would have gone in and created the different targets that I would want to select from for use in my, in this case, statistic gadgets. So that allows me to not only have those numeric fields that have counts or values, but I can now display them as a percentage of marching towards a particular goal, be it a monthly target, a daily target, or a yearly target. You can pre-create them and display the metric in that format. So depending on what kind of information you may want to maybe display on the shop floor, percentages are always seemingly better than just a raw number, as it describes kind of a progression towards the end result or the score or the goal that you're trying to achieve. The product group part of the wizard allows me to select which companies I actually want to include in my data mart. And this, for those companies that have multiple product groups, allows us to now consolidate and display metrics that are more corporate driven, or at the executive level can be extremely corporate driven, to show activities across all, as opposed to just activities within one or more different product groups. Once I have saved this data mart and I select the action here to generate the data mart, there would be a little indicator here to generate the data mart. In this case, it's telling me that my table has been created. The plant gauge module has taken care for me of generating the database structure with all of the data fields that I've generated, adding the indexes based on the dimensions that I had selected earlier, and created for me that named database already in my overall, in this case, pervasive SQL database. So in this case, the one that was created was sales order. It's been populated, or it would have been populated once I generate that data mart with all the information, all the fields, the columns, and the groupings required. If I'm using targets, the target database was also generated and accumulated for me so that I can display the information as quickly as possible. The act of generating this information comes from our calculations area, and if you're familiar with our parameters and routing, you know that you can submit this task to be regenerated on an interval that would make most sense to the type of information that you're displaying. So some data marts might be generated daily, some might be generated hourly, some might be generated even more quickly depending on how fast the information is changing and that you want to display different information in to those screens. At the same time, the ability to have those databases created allows users to access that information using third-party tools, third-party ODBC tools, be they Microsoft Query or Crystal, so that any of the information that you have available in there, just like it is within the Industrios system, is also available to us from these data mart databases that are created and managed on the fly. So once we have this data mart created, let's take a look at some of the dashboards that we can generate from it. I've gone ahead and created Under the sales order category, and again, anything that I'm looking at here is user manageable. So I am going to click on the sales order dashboard, and I've created 3 categories of visualizations within those. The first one is a key sales indicators screen that I've selected, a visualization for sales by order, and then lastly, a sales management analysis visualization. So first, let's go into our key sales indicators. So the screen displays a number of different gadgets for me. In this case, it's displaying 5, and you have an order bookings gadget, which is just counting a number of orders, a dollars backlog. I have one here, a backlog specifically to a client, because I want to manage or I want to be monitoring that number for a particular reason. My total sales could be to date or for whatever period I'm working with, and then a separate type of gadget with the gauge orientation that again allows us to see a comparative value or a progression towards some type of goal. So you can see on the lower right-hand corner of the gadgets or of the statistics box, you have a magnifying glass. So I would want to, if I want to look at the numbers that are underlying this value, I can click on it and see a drill down into the table and all of the information that was used to generate that statistic. If I want to act with this information, I can. For example, I could say sort by customer name, and I'm particularly interested in this order. It's an important order for me, and as you would know, the folder in the Industrios method means that you can open it up and see more information. And in this case, clicking the folder will take me directly to that order within the system. And I am within the Industrios system here. I can be doing any of the operators that I require. I can be adding appointments, adding history, documents, or scanning, or drilling even further back and forth within the system to look at the documents that were generated from this order or that were required prior, such as the quote, or in this case, the RMA document, as I can see right here. So it gives you, again, a different window or a different opportunity to interact with your data. If I want to work with this information outside of Industrios, we've made available to you a direct export to Excel, which will give you a quick normalized export, all the data available to me, and if you're familiar with it, I can start to use the tools within Excel to look at specific information and quickly work with that grouping, just like I was working within the pre-grouped indicator if I want. Close that up, and not, and back we go. So if I wanted to, let's go through the creation of this sales orders to ship day indicator. I would want to go in, I'm going to go and manage my dashboards. I'm going to select the dashboard I want to manage, select the page that I want to work with, and I'm going to edit this particular gadget. To show you again the wizard-oriented steps that we have here, we're selecting the data mart that we're working with. If I want to interact with the target, I would add it. The date range that I'm looking at, so in this case, because it's a today-oriented gadget, I'm only looking at the system date. And we've integrated the Industrios date tool, which will allow us to do things like, how many orders am I getting so far this month, this fiscal period, this year, or for all time if we're looking for. We would then apply that information to one of the metrics that's available to us, the measure, and then what function do we want to show on the gadget itself. The next step allows me to work with the numbers. In this case, I'm expecting a number between 1 and 100. So or maybe I'm not, I could actually, if I'm actually something in the thousands, I could add decimals, I could add indicators of thousands, I could change the format of the numbering itself. The next page, going back to my initial dimensions, if I wanted to group or filter on any one of those initial dimensions, so maybe again, I'm looking for orders to have to ship today for a particular customer, or a particular order kind or particular item type, again, I can filter in through and have specific gadgets directed towards those specific reasons. I'm going to give the gadget a name. I can show a color that I want to display, which could become meaningful to yourselves. You have an array of different kind of indicators that, so from a distance, and more important when you're looking at it in kind of theater mode, these icons could become indicative of certain things. If you want to allow the drill down or not into Industrios. And then lastly, do you want to modify the color scheme and the indicator based on arriving at a particular value? So maybe at the point of having 25 sales orders to date to ship, that might indicate that I need more people in the shipping warehouse, so the color might change. Maybe if I hit a particular threshold, that indicates that we're allowed to order pizza and have a party on the floor. Some type of, again, goal-oriented reason for having, excuse me, for having the metric in the first place. And then once I save the gadget, I can take that and I can redeploy it, move it around, display it in different ways, depending on how I want to show that information on the shop floor or on the dashboard for the workstation itself. So moving ahead into the second kind of dashboard type category is the sales by order screen, which now has a Tableau generated visualization or graph or chart. And I might want to take a look at that. Again, I'm looking at information that is from kind of all time within my product group. I might be looking at a particular month or a particular day, whatever kind of, again, is important for you to be visualizing or looking at. And in this case, I want to know about my web orders. So I only want to keep the web orders in my system. And that allows me to quickly drill down and just keep those web orders. I'm maybe even more interested in what's happened or what were the orders that we took in that period. I can see that that's Q3 of 2007, had a particular value, and I'm curious as to what made up that value. I can drill down into the Tableau tables, have a look at what the summarization was, and then what the underlying information was to actually get to the numbers. So it becomes interactive, and you can move around quite easily as you're picking around and having a look at what you want to display and configure for different users ways to look at your data. So, as you kind of go up from the plant floor to the top floor, you are summarizing and grouping information and maybe applying colors or techniques to make it simpler to see outlying information, to see information that kind of relates more importantly to a particular period, and then allows you to drill back down right down to those details. Another visualization here that we generated was more of an analysis-oriented one, where I've taken the orders and I'm taking a look at them, look at them by the state that it was shipped to. In this case, for those of you that are familiar with or have seen or have signed up with Apple iMusic, you'll see when your Apple selected to show your configuration or preferences or suggestions for you, they took this bubble approach. And basically, the largest bubble is the most important. The smaller bubbles are less important to the information that's being shown. So I can see here my largest state of delivery was BC in 2005 Q1. Now, this could be such an outlier because the bubble is so much bigger than the other ones. I can select to exclude it, and then it'll start to resize the other bubbles until I get to either a normalized function or a number that I'm really curious about this one, for example. And again, just like I was earlier, drill down into the table, look at the underlying information to see what was happening and why, and maybe question that, or maybe see that there's been some progression or some trending that I can act on. If I want to save the information that I have in this visualization in this format. I can at any time download that. It'll send it again off into an Excel spreadsheet for me so I can work with it or send it around to my team to be worked on later. So these indicators, these dashboards and categories are the ones that would be displayed in the canvas of the Industrios workbench itself for different users, could be for different groups, and within the methods of Industrios, the last canvas that I'm looking at is the first one that I will see the next time that I log in. So it becomes kind of my favorite or my preferred method of interacting with my data. If we flip now to the other presentation method, which is the theater mode, we can see a couple of different things that we're able to do. So first of all, I'm going to look at the actual creation of a theater. What we do is you give the theater name an ID. In this case, I've created one for the boardroom to show sales display. You could have one for shop floor station 1, one for main entrance, whatever you want to actually display this information. Within that, again, a little wizard to take from all of the different dashboards, not only metric oriented, but could be the calendars or those web intranet or internet pages that we've used through our URL page, Gadget. You can display any ones of those onto a particular theater and move around. So in this case, if the sales by order was the most important, you can move it around up and down if you need to. After we've selected that, go back here. Oh, I seem to have hit. Let's go back through that again. Okay. We display or we select how we want to configure that dashboard and that theater, which would be how long do we want it to show? Do we want it to show every day of the week and at what time? And since we know that the salespeople really are only focused between 10 and 2, that's the only time that we're going to show them their kind of indicators. Once we're done, we publish that theater and it's ready to be displayed. And to end off, I will actually go through and let's have a look and display that theater. And my screen now becomes as if it were a television screen or monitor around the floor, and we'll display each of the dashboards that we've looked at in this presentation for 10 seconds each and continue cycling through until we get tired of seeing all the good information that's being displayed back to us. And Jacques, I can hand it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Edward. That was, as usual, a very clear and concise overview of PlantGauge. And just back to my screen now, just for a quick wrap up. Please bear with me as I cycle through the different options here from a screen sharing standpoint. Struggling with the webinar. So, okay. All right, I keep going around in circles here. I'm going to leave it in this mode. So how do we get started with all of this? Well, either visit our website and fill out a contact form. You can email us at, and I suppose I could show this. So email us at sales@industrials.com. Some of you may already be working with Paul Schantz. If that's the case and he's your account manager, you can reach out to him at pschantz@industrials.com. You can call us at 905-829-2525. Or if you still choose to do that, you can use the questions panel to indicate that you want a phone call, or even if you have a question, you can still do that in the webinar control panel. So at this point, I'm going to reach out for questions. Not sure if we have anything as far as questions throughout the presentation. So there are a few comments here that I'm reading through. So there's a few questions that are related to the interface of Industrios that Edward showed. So it's important to note that the version of Industrios that runs Plant Gauge is version 3.6. So if your screens in Industrios look a little bit different, it's only a question of being a few versions behind or many versions behind, depending on where you are. But it's just if you're under maintenance, it's a question of exercising your access to the newer 3.6 version and upgrading to it. And there was another question with respect, and there's actually a few questions that are on the same topic with respect to can we use Plant Gauge to run reports off of the data? And the answer is obviously you can, but that would be a custom report. But what you can also do is bring out the information that you're looking for into the format using the mechanisms that Edward referred to. And then if you want to take it outside of Plant Gauge and present it in Excel, then you can also choose to do that. I don't see any other requests right now that are outside of these topics. So we'll wrap up at this point. We've spent quite a bit of time together today. I want to, I thank you for taking time to do that. I hope you've all found today's session informative. I also hope that we've left you with the impression that number one, big data is here. Two, that business intelligence can help you make sense of it. And three, that at Industrios, we're helping our customers deploy tools and business practices to put your big data and business intelligence at work for you for your continuous improvement purposes, as well as your continued and increased competitiveness. On that note, thanks again for your attention today, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Have a good day, everyone.